All right, good evening. Welcome to Thousand Oaks Bible Church. We're glad you're here watching at home. And all day long we were waiting for that big rainstorm that never came, but that's all right. We've had a lot of rain lately and many things to be thankful for. And we have, if you were not here Sunday, I would encourage you to go back and look at the sermon online that we presented a possibility for a building project, and nothing is final yet. We're not presenting anything specific yet, but we're saying we're praying about it and doing some investigating, and just kind of be looking back to that, and if you didn't get to see it. We are here tonight. We're in our series on the Beatitudes, and we do want to begin in prayer. And let's just begin with our usual prayer requests, and I will start with a praise. Once again, the offering was very good Sunday. The Lord has continued to bless us with His goodness, and we found out we have a couple more to be baptized this week, which is the third time we've got to baptize in 6 weeks, I think. So that's a good thing. So any prayer concerns, we know we have the two major ones, Lupe and Robert, but how about y'all? Anything you can think of? Kathy?
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah, okay. Definitely.
She's fine.
Well, let's hope that this is an early detection and, they can be preventive. My goodness. Nuts, and I was just going to get her to run one with me. All right, so that's Lupe, Robert, and Kathy. Anything else, Rebecca? Saturday, right? Okay. Well, I imagine there's a lot of people starting to travel right about now, and then, of course, next week being Memorial Day and then into vacation season. So, okay, those. Anything else? Worthy, have you heard when they're going to, I know they're backed up, but when they might start the foundation? Because people are still asking me on like Sunday mornings.
Still the
End of June?
end of June.
Okay. All right. For those who don't know what we're talking about, the church has some substantial foundation work that needs to be done, and a man that was born again here and baptized is graciously, wonderfully donating all that repair free of charge to us. I think that's a wonderful blessing. That's a generational kind of blessing, and but that we're talking about when that gets done, because of the COVID, everything got backed up, and so it'll probably be the end of June before they do it, and it'll take a few days. It's not like it takes like a month. So, 7-10 days. So, Lord willing, then that'll be done, and we can maybe by 4th of July be free of the foundation concern. Hello there, Dr. J. Dr. J, I've never thought about that. Anything else? I talked to him Sunday too, and he was so kind to me, and I think his love language is touch, because he patted me on the shoulder sometimes, and I mean, it just felt warm. I mean, I felt like he was passing his gratitude in a way that was very manifested. So very, very neat. It's just how sometimes you can read people, but we're glad that JR's had a recovery from a very tough fall. Bill's another neat guy. I mean, he's not the kind of guy that you're going to just put on the cover of GQ magazine, or you look at, he's going to be on the cover of your church pictory directory, but you talk to the guy and he's just wonderful and just a very kind heart. That's awesome. And I talked to Dr. Grant, the pastor of Covenant Community that used to meet with us for 5 years, and talked to him today, and they are starting in June the first time to have their services in person. And they're going to do it with very, it's not the full-blown thing, kind of a staggered deal, but you know, I understand. He's not the only one. I've got other friends that they've been very cautious, and I respect that. But was talking to him about who's done their building work, and he's very, very high on a recommendation for us to consider. So, well, let's go ahead and pray. And Rebecca, do you want to take us in the prayer time tonight? Did they ever get the last $800 or whatever for that scooter bus or whatever it's called? There you go. It's just a shame that we need money to do anything. We ought to outlaw money. Wouldn't that be great? Well, we are at the very end of we're in the Beatitudes and we're at meekness. We'll finish that up here in a few minutes. By the way, on Sunday morning, we have been we started in the Gospel of Luke, actually of Jesus Christ, according to Luke. And the first 3 weeks, we've been looking at the birth and childhood of Jesus. This week, we're in Luke chapter 3. We cover John the Baptist, and that's a very interesting, like if you were going to do a character study, John the Baptist would be one of the really neat guys to take a look at. And then by the following week, we are actually into the life of Jesus. I think we'll right off have his temptation and going out fishing with the disciples early in the ministry. There's so many great things that happen right off the bat when we get into the life of Jesus. So, but this week we have John the Baptist. Next week it'll be the start of his life, and then the Lord's Supper, and then it's full-blown continuing. But tonight, this is the conclusion of the material on meekness. And it's interesting because I got a text, and I think it's somebody that was watching, and it was one of those things, I got the text by a phone number and not a name, and I didn't recognize the number. And so, but they asked a good question. They said, if Jesus was meek, how did he flip the temple, the tables in the temple and the whip and everything? And that's a good question. And I would not only say that, but I can think of times when the disciples tried to keep children away from him, and he rebuked them sharply. And we would say, well, that's not being meek. And actually, there were 4 times that Jesus showed what I would call righteous anger. So when I think when we're talking about meekness, I think it does not preclude disagreement done well. I look at the early church, the church in the book of Acts, and you see difficulties. There was Paul and Barnabas, and Paul didn't want John Mark around, and all that drama about who was going on the mission trips and not, and there was sharp dissension. You get to Acts chapter 15, and the whole chapter is about a church problem. So there are times that meekness is the goal, but there's other times that a disagreement can be serving a godly purpose. And with that, having said that, one of the things I want to talk about with the conclusion is Romans chapter 14, verse 19. It says, "Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification." So I think the Bible says, look, our goal is always to have peace, make every effort to do that. But us being human beings, there are going to be times that we have disagreement. Like you could be married, and I've been married to Rebecca almost 47 years. Now, we decided a long time ago that arguing doesn't solve anything, but we can have disagreements. We just do it in a way that we say, our goal here isn't to win the argument. Our goal here is to figure out what the solution is. And you've heard me say many times, if one of you wins, you both lose. And so I think the scriptural thing is, look, there are going to be disagreements that come up, but let's see how we handle that. Can we do it in a way that God receives the honor? Romans chapter 15, verse 2. "Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification." Recently, I got convicted about do I do enough interaction with our neighbors? And twice I've had chocolate chip cookies that I've made, and on one time I went to the neighbor right next to us and took some over to him, and then another time the lady across the street and her daughter were out there, and I took them chocolate chips, and both times the people were amazed. And the guy, he right away, he's like, yeah, so where do you go to pastor again? I thought I've told him like 5 times, but I gave him a card and said, look, here's my card. And he's like, well, don't be surprised if I walk in. And I just feel like there are things like that we can try to do. I know life is different now than it was 30 years ago when people used to sit on their porch and drink iced tea at the close of the day or whenever that was. It might have been 50 years ago. I can't remember when. That's when everybody go in and watch Leave It to Beaver as a family and stuff like that, and the Beverly Hillbillies. But it does say the Bible is. This is not like this verse was for 50 years ago. This is for now. Let everyone please his neighbor, for his good to edification, on how to build them up. We had one of the coolest things happen with our dog a week ago, right? We have 2 dogs, Boss and Chubby. And Chubby is uncommonly large for the breed. And she's the daughter of Boss. And Boss is a couple years older. And when Rebecca comes in the evening and has supper, I sit in my recliner and she sits on the couch across from us. As soon as she sits down, the dogs jump up there and they want to sit next to Rebecca. Well, Chubby got up there first and she lays facing me right up against Rebecca's leg. And she's got these big dark eyes and she's looking at me like, hey, look what I got the prime spot. And Boss is just looking real sad up at Rebecca. And yeah, he had jaw surgery. And Rebecca's feeling sorry for Boss, and she goes, Boss, why don't you come up here? And no lie, Rebecca's right here. She could tell you that's all she said, and Chubby instantly gets up from being next to her and moves over about 1.5 feet so Boss can get up and take that spot, and then she comes next to him. It's plain as day. I mean, she showed a dog knows meekness. I mean, dogs aren't supposed to be like whatever that is, courteous or whatever. I mean, that's not, you train that. But she said, Boss, come here. And Chubby moved out of the way, let Boss come up and get that prime spot, and then she moved over. And I saw it happen as it was going on, and I thought, that is amazing. So we got to see an example of that. Second point of this, John chapter 13, verse 5. After that, this is about the foot washing. Jesus poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And I guess the question would be, on your last night on earth, if somebody says you got 12 hours to live, what do you think you're going to do? I mean, you can run out to Six Flags and have one more night at an amusement park, and you're going to go out to Fogo de Chao and eat as much meat. Me, I'd be tempted to maybe go to H-E-B and get like a container of Bluebell Rocky Road and mint chip and eat the 2 containers together, because I think that combination is what they serve in heaven. What would you do if you had 12 hours to live? Would you look at old family videos, or would you write something poignant on Facebook, or I don't know what, but I don't think how my list would be going into the church and washing a bunch of people's feet. I mean, I'm just going to be that honest. I mean, because Jesus did it, I wouldn't preclude that, but without the example of Jesus, that's probably not what I'm thinking about, and yet that's exactly what Jesus did. He got on his knees, and he put his face and hands down filthy feet. Remember, there's no asphalt, there's no sidewalk. When people would walk through the city, they were walking through where people had herded goats and sheep and animal droppings and all that, and that's why foot washing was a big element of going into somebody's house. And Jesus sat there and washed the disciples' feet, and he used his own clothing as a rag. And then the rest of the account, John chapter 13, 12 through 17, is the rest of that account. And Jesus gave us the example of meekness, because one of the people's feet he washed would have been Thomas. Thomas, the one that doubted him and said, look, if I can't stick my hand and put it into his side If I can't put my finger into the nail in his hand, I'm not going to believe. I mean, he doubted that much. And Jesus, knowing that, still washed his feet. Jesus washed the feet of Judas, who was the one who's going to betray him with a kiss, and literally caused Jesus to be led to the brutal torment and execution that he faced. Jesus still washed his feet. So Jesus did have that example. And finally, meekness involves patience. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 5, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. John 13:35, by this all men know you're my disciples, if you have love one for another. So that's our material on meekness. So now that brings us to our next beatitude, and I think I said last week, out of all the lists, I think this is my personal favorite. I mean, all of them are good, there's no doubt about it, but there's just something about this one here is kind of where my heart kind of hangs out. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. This is the list as he started. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for there's the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And now this one is Matthew 5, 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. I think a few years ago, Rebecca and I came to the mutual agreement, there's not many shows on TV that we're interested in. Now, we watch programs on TV, but we're really drawn to the reality shows. My favorite show is Deadliest Catch. That's Life and Death. And my second favorite show is getting ready to start, I think June 3rd. That is Alone. If you have not watched Alone, I guarantee you, if you watch 15 minutes, you'll go back and binge watch every episode. It is the most compelling, fascinating, riveting, spellbinding hour that you can watch on TV. It's people alone, and they have to film themselves, and they put them in some frozen area. There's no guarantee they're going to live, and there's no deadline. Okay, I got to survive 14 days. You stay out there until you're the last one. And that usually means like 3 months or more that you don't see anybody. You got to get your own food. You got to make your own shelter, even though it might be 30 below. It's absolutely amazing. I love shows like that. I love Gold Rush, where they're in Alaska and they've got to go dig for the gold, and it's problem solving. It's the soil content, the machinery, the relationships. And another one that we watch all the time is Bear Grylls, Running Wild with Bear Grylls. And if you've never seen the show, it's on Tuesday nights, and there's this guy, and he gets people, everything from singers to actors. He even had Barack Obama go out with him there, and part of the thing is they go out, and they're not allowed to sack lunches. They don't go out with a bag of bologna sandwiches or whatever. They go out there, and so they'll eat grubs and earthworms and dead animals that they find, and you watch those kind of shows, and there's a principle. The principle is this: if you get hungry enough, you will eat anything. If you get hungry enough, you will eat anything. My closest empathy to that is, not every year, but most years, we've done a church fast. And in January, when we've done it, last year because of COVID, we didn't do it, I asked the church to do 3 days, Sunday through Wednesday, and then I usually tag on a 4th day. And you know what? After 4 days with no chewable food, I mean, I'll drink water for a couple days, then I had Gatorade and fruit juice. But at the 4th day, when you haven't eaten and you're going to break it, Rebecca will say, well, how do you want to break your fast? And I'll say, I don't care. I would even almost eat McDonald's. And I wouldn't eat a McDonald's, and even then I wouldn't eat a hamburger there. I'd eat French fries. But I just, when you're hungry enough, you will eat about anything. And one of the things that I like to do when I know I'm going to end the fast, I like to take a package of peanut butter crackers, and I'll just take off just the tiniest bite, like a micro ounce, and I'll just taste that first few molecules. And just to have peanut butter and salt and cracker in my mouth again, it tastes so good. And you don't even have to have a full bite. Then I'll take a little bit bigger bite, a little bit, and finally I eat the rest of the cracker, and it is powerful. And when you're hungry, well, let me give you an example in history. I have a couple books on Stalingrad and Leningrad. I think I gave the last one away to Josh, but I want to read a paragraph that talks about World War II, how bad it got in Leningrad. That's a Russian city, and the Germans put the city under siege. They surround it, and no food comes in, and they've bombarded it in, and they've shelled the city, and so there's no way to manufacture food. This is a paragraph out of one of the history books. In World War II, Germany laid siege to the Russian city of Leningrad on September 9th, 1941. Through aerial bombing and long-range shelling, the city was soon reduced to rubble. The existing food and water lasted about 3 months. Food, not gold, became the most valuable currency for the inhabitants. Not only did they eat all the animals, but they also dug up the frozen hides out of the snow of animals killed through the shelling and bombing and boiled them for soup. The final step was cannibalism. In the next 3 years, over 1.5 million would die, mostly from starvation. Think about that. That's a city right there the size of San Antonio, wiped out. Imagine if somebody surrounded San Antonio, let's say Dallas, because they're so jealous of how good we have it in San Antonio. And Dallas surrounds San Antonio, nobody can come in and out, they bomb it, and there's no food coming in and everything. And then the whole city dies. That's about what happened to Leningrad. We know of, gosh, when we were in Colorado and I was hiking in an area, they said this is where the Donner Reed group had passed through. And Donner Reed group, I don't know if you guys remember them, but they were the people that tried to take a shortcut going from the east to go out to California, and they get stranded by an early snowfall. And in 1846 and 1847, and that winter in the Sierra Madres, and only 48 people out of 97 people survived. And they finally figured out that a lot of the people that survived had cannibalized people that were weak and dying, and they killed them and ate them. So when people are hungry, they'll do about anything. And that's the kind of hunger, that's the word for hunger here. This is not, I want a snack. I'm between lunch and supper, and I think I'll eat a bag of Skittles kind of hunger. This is a thing of, I am famished. My stomach is roaring. It's not just growling. I'm emaciated. I'm craving something. And that word hunger, literally in the Greek word, and you look at Vine's New Testament, it means to crave, to badly need food. The same word is used in Matthew 4:2, and that's where Jesus has been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. Now think about that. My fast that I do is 4 days. Jesus beats that by 10. He goes 40 days. And you know what the Bible said? Matthew 4:2, and after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he became hungry. That's what that word hungry means. So when the Bible says, blessed are you when you hunger and thirst, that's the level of hunger we're talking about. Defining a word doesn't mean that we really understand it. If I said to you, give me a definition for love, I'm going to ask my dear precious wife, Rebecca, give me a definition of love. Well, give me a sentence. You're on TV right now. There's no pressure, but this will be existing 500 years from now. What is love? Okay. Unselfish giving of yourself. So that's a definition. But if I said, what does love feel like? What does love feel like? That's a different thing. If I said, what does a chocolate chip cookie taste like? You'd say, oh, it's good. It's crunchy and soft. But if I gave you a chocolate chip cookie and said, now tell me what that tastes like, you're going to say, oh man, there's layers of flavor. I can taste the butter and the chocolate's melty and it's warm and it's a different thing to experience it. And when Jesus is talking to this, I think he said it in such a way that he didn't just say, in a clinical way, it's hunger. I think that what he was going for there was to get people to feel it. Maybe, a lot of his stories would amplify what he was telling. There's no parable that goes along with this, but I think hunger is a word that we've all experienced it. And if I said, when have you been hungry? You could probably think of a time that, man, you were either fasting or like when you're getting ready to have a surgery, they say, okay, don't eat anything for 12 hours. That's nothing. But you know what? Because somebody told you can't eat, all of a sudden you just feel like you're starving. Okay, all I want is a peanut butter cracker, but I can't have it. I can't have it. And Jesus said, blessed are you when you hunger and thirst after righteousness. There's a guy that's probably, of this generation that we live right now, probably in the top 3 most quoted, well, top 5. I mean, John Piper is the guy I'm talking about, but A.W. Tozer, Adrian Rogers, those guys are heavily quoted. But this is the famous quote. Of all his quotes, this is the most famous. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. Now, if you think about that, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. What is he saying there? Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the 23rd Psalm. When David goes, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And David, who had everything, he was a king. I mean, and maybe not at that point, but he knew he was going to be. He could have said, all I need is, $40 million of gold or whatever. But he said, the Lord is my shepherd. I don't need anything else. And everything else would be extraneous. It's fluff, it's drivel, it's marshmallow cream. The only thing of substance that I want is the Lord. And David had a heart, we know, that was emaciated for God. He had that was the one thing that he wanted. And when John Piper says God is most glorified us when we are most satisfied in him, that means our hunger can only be satisfied by him. Have you ever had a craving? You're sitting in your living room, you watch maybe TV or a ball game, and all of a sudden you just like, oh man, I'm hungry for something. What is it? I'm hungry. And all of a sudden you realize I'm hungry for peanut brittle. It's always something weird that you don't have in your house. Where can I go find peanut brittle? I don't even know if H-E-B sells peanut brittle. I mean, so I remember a year when Rebecca and I were married, and we were at Bible college, and you won't remember this, but I remember to this day, I got a craving for watermelon in late September in Springfield, Missouri. And I literally drove from where we lived at one end of Springfield down Glenstone and stopped at every consumer's grocery store and a couple other ones, I can't remember the name, looking for watermelons. But in those days, they didn't have watermelons. I spent probably an hour and a half looking for watermelon, and they didn't have it. And the more I looked, the more I wanted it. Every once in a while, nowadays, my craving is basically pizza. Man, I'm hungry for a trilogy pizza or something like that. But that's hungry for. But a craving is something a little more intense that you really want it. I know pregnant women get a certain thing where they want something. And, Josh has told funny stories about what his wife wanted when Jessica was pregnant with their kids. And what are you hungry for? What is your craving? What is the thing that you really want to eat? Because we all eat something, and I don't mean food right now. I'm talking about in our life. Our life has an appetite. What is your life wanting to munch on? You are what you eat. You are what you eat. And you don't have to look far for me to know that I eat my share of pizza and popcorn. I'm a popcorn junkie. I eat it. But we have to realize that when God says hunger for righteousness, he didn't say, he completed the statement, blessed are you when you hunger and thirst for righteousness. Let me give you another verse, John chapter 6, verse 68. Peter answered Jesus, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Jesus was doing like a little quiz, like, what do you guys want? Where are you going to go? And Peter says, look, there's no list. There's no, okay, 1, 2, 3. You are the only thing on the list. My only hope is you. There is no plan B. There's no other option. There's no other choice. So, what does it mean to hunger and thirst? The point Jesus is making is for righteousness. You're blessed when you crave righteousness. Righteousness literally means integrity, virtue, purity of life, rightness, correctness of thinking, feeling, or acting. The history of the word, and I did not know this until I studied this, the word righteousness or righteous comes from the word right wise, RIGHTWISE. And you can look it up. You can look it up on your dictionary. That was the word that was used back in the early 1900s. It was a word, and it literally meant righteous, just, justifiable, and it was literally a compound word, right, wise, being wise about doing right. And I like that, right, wise. Righteousness sounds kind of intimidating. Right, wise kind of tells me a little more accurate of what the word actually means. Here's a word picture from the Bible about righteousness. Psalm chapter 42, verse 1 and 2. This verse is a praise song, came out of this years ago, about 30 years ago. As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? I can't sing it, but there used to be that song, As the deer pants for the water. So anyway, you'd have to listen to it that somebody could actually sing. But, you remember that? when I used to teach that to the teenagers, I'd say, if you want to remember what it's like, just remember short pants. And not short pants like I'm wearing right now, but like our dogs, when you run them, they pant really fast. And I think that's what David was using there. He's, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul pants after you. That he's literally saying, my soul is, I need God, I need God. And if you've ever run or done something where all of a sudden you were out of breath and you're trying to breathe it, you just pant really hard and you try to get it back in. David once again gives us that great word picture. Psalm chapter 63, verse 1, God, you are my God. I shall be watching for you. My soul thirsts for you. My soul yearns for you in a dry and exhausted land where there is no water. We've talked about hunger a lot, but the second part of that verse is, blessed are those which do hunger and thirst. I remember vividly my most epic experience of being without water. Early in Colorado, I decided to go hiking, and I had no idea how quickly you would lose water at that altitude. And I thought, oh, this is only about a 5-mile hike. I can do that. Of course, it was also about a vertical of about 3,000 feet. And so it turned out to be about a 2-hour hike, and about an hour in, I was really thirsty. I mean, I thought I was ready to pass out. And I knew that you could take a pebble and put it in your mouth. And I did that it worked for a little bit. And then afterwards, it was just dry rocks in my mouth. It wasn't even making saliva anymore. And I was coming down the trail, and there was a young couple, and they had like these, the sports bottles with them and everything. And I said, would you guys just squirt some water in my mouth? And they said, you don't even have water with you, and you're up here on Mount Falcon? And I said, no. And they said, you're new here, right? And I said, I just moved from Texas. And they laughed, and yeah, Texas. And she said, here, take this. I said, no, that's your bottle. She said, no, just pay it forward and just carry water from you from now. And literally, man, that's probably saved my life. I sat there and I thought, okay, I got to save some of this for a little bit later, but I wanted to drink the whole thing. And I remember that so well. And have you ever been out doing yard work and you've sweated out and you're thirsty? Well, that's what David's saying. Look, my soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you in a dry and exhausted land where there is no water. So, Philippians chapter 3, verse 9, and Paul's talking about and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. So we're finishing that verse. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. And that righteousness is not our righteousness, what we think is right. It's what's right in the eyes of God. Seeing, well, I don't know. There's a section here on the prodigal son. I don't know if I could finish it in 6 minutes. So I tell you what, we'll stop right there and we'll pick up next week. It'll be the prodigal son, and I think that's going to be a good picture, because that's going to be a picture of somebody that hungered, and he tried various things to fill his hunger, and I don't want to teach it ahead of time because it's good enough to wait on it. So, any thoughts or comments from the what we looked at tonight? I'm so glad you tied Saltgrass to the world, because my wife thinks that's the only restaurant that we're allowed to go to. So and Worthy just pointed out the world is a lot like Saltgrass, that it's a false food. You know, the thing is, as a pastor, you wonder why there's not more reaction by action to the sermons. Why, if we say we need nursery workers or we need youth workers, and you think, why do we not get that reaction? I think it goes down to what our appetite is. I mean, what you just said, if we're filled up with things in the world and we got so busy we're doing other things, then naturally then we're not interested in doing the things that God would want us to do. So we were talking to Matt today that you know, we're getting close to starting back up as far as a lot of the ministries of the church. And we've had more children come into the church. We need to, we're going to need some people to help in the children's area. And, but we can't make people do that. We need people to say, I'm hungering and thirsting to do the will of God. But they're not going to do it if they're not hungry, if they're not wanting to you know, eat the things that God has said that we need to. Jesus talked about, my meat is to do the will of the Father that sent me. What is our meat? Is it to do God's will, or is it to do what we want? You know, so there's that element there. So any other observations, thoughts? Well, how about this question then? How do we get hungry? Do we make ourselves hungry? How does that happen? That's the wrong refrigerator. I'm in the wrong house.
Get the world out of me to where I go and I'm longing for.
You know, the times I think I've been the hungriest have been when I've been in the right environment, like at a camp or a conference or at a, you know, something where you just feel like, man, I'm separated from all the things that distract me normally, and I'm here in this environment where it's all God, and you just think, is that the only way? Is there, as a pastor, I think, how can I get our church to be hungry? And I can't be in everybody's home and doing a refrigerator check and that kind of thing, you know. So it's very, I don't know what the word is, not frustrating, but it's disheartening that you know, you want to see things happen and you can't manufacture it, and you want the wind of the Spirit to blow. You don't want to put up electric fans and say, that's the Spirit, you know, but you want the Spirit to blow and you want Him to do things that it's unmistakably Him. And, you know, lately, gosh, we've had some wonderful services, and the fact that the baptisms we've had and the spirit that's been the services and the child dedication where there are people everywhere, and just the excitement at the door and everything. But but somewhere that needs to translate into filling ministry needs too. And that's I know I'd like to, by the end of September, do another night down at Strong Foundation. I thought we had a great time remember that in October 2 years ago? And I need to get that clear with Paul, but I'd like to get that in the works and just do some things that back for ministry. And you know, the other thing that I really want to do is some fellowship stuff. That fellowship was such a big part of the early church, and that's one thing that we haven't been able to do for a year and a half. You think we had a drive-through barbecue thing a year ago, August, and then Sunday, George had something for the parents of the youth, but we haven't done a church thing probably 2 years. I mean, it's probably August of 19. So it's almost 2 years. We're going to do one in August, that Lord willing, but assuming everything is good, we'll get to do it. But I've had people tell me lately, church is good, but we'd like to connect with people. And I said, I know. And but I think we're hungry for certain things, but we gotta cover all the bases for all the things that we need to do. Well, all right, we'll wrap it up there. I know we got a meeting for our elder folks here coming up after the church. So thank you for watching from home, and we'll see you Sunday, either live or online at 10:30 sharp. And then a week from Sunday is the Lord's Supper, and that's always a wonderful time. God bless y'all, and see you Sunday.